Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Now, I think this session is going to delve on the biggest existential crisis facing humanity and society. So I'm glad to see you guys in the room. Again, my inspiration was my two daughters, who were young at that time, and this was more than 15 years ago, which led me to start something called the Corporate Eco Forum. The Corporate Eco Forum is an invitation-only members group of 80 of the world's largest companies, totaling over $5 trillion in combined revenues. And we work with the chief sustainability officers at these companies to mitigate climate risk, to buy more renewable energy, to lower their greenhouse gas footprint. And as you can tell, I started this 15 plus years ago, not realizing this would be the biggest crisis facing us today. So we are very privileged to have three people join me on stage to really talk about how technology can really mitigate climate risk. You've all seen the extremes in climate in the last few years. Extreme heat, drought on one side, on the other side flooding, and many things in between, and cold weather and so on and so forth. And this is only going to increase as time goes on, right? So what we're going to discuss today is what large corporates are doing with sustainability and dealing with climate change, but also what kind of solutions that are already existing, but more importantly for those of you in the audience, what new solutions can all of you as entrepreneurs and founders be developing to save this planet. So I want to call all our panelists up. First of all, we have, please come on up and take your seats. Come on, Anirban, Aruna, and Vaishali. So please give them a round of applause, please. So we're going to kick off this session, and then I'll introduce a couple of the panelists as well. We're going to kick this off with someone who's been to the recent COP conference. You know, every year the world has a conference where people meet about climate change. These are government leaders, corporate leaders, and nonprofits and activists. And Vaishali Sinha, who's the Chief Sustainability Officer of Renew Power, the largest renewable energy company in India, is here. And she recently was in Egypt at Sharm el-Sheikh at the COP conference. So we would like her to deliver some keynote remarks, and then we'll get on with the panel. Vaishali, please come up on stage.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. It's an absolute pleasure to be here at the TAI Hyderabad conference on this very important topic of technology driving sustainability in large corporates. Thanks a lot, Emar, for the introduction and setting the context, and also, most importantly, for doing what you do. It's really good to see that there is interest amongst all you entrepreneurs who are here in this area of sustainability, and hence the topic is on the agenda. Also, you know, over the last year or so, we've seen a lot of serious issues, geopolitical issues happening in the world, which has been a cause of concern, which has also got us to think about the energy security crisis. And when we think about it, everybody's mind, I guess, shifts to, if not oil and gas, then what? And if not that, then perhaps renewables. And hence, it's, I guess, time for all of us to think about not only renewables, but sustainability, broadly speaking. And at this forum here, in particular, sustainability and what can technology do for us to get to some of our goals which we've set. And towards that extent, we've seen that the narrative globally has been pretty good. I mean, we all talk about, will we get to net zero targets, and how difficult the world is, and how difficult it is that we have climate disasters which occurred once in 100 years. We are now seeing them occur. 3 of such climate disasters occur every year, if you look at the global landscape. So things are not good, of course, and we all have to think about it. We all have to find solutions. But it's important for us to take a step back and also look at various events and various how people are coming together to discuss, to identify solutions and solve for this crisis. And I feel quite heartened when I look at what's happening around. And towards that end, I guess COP is one such event. And so I was talking to somebody who's attended all the COPs. And he was sharing with me that over the last couple of years, the amount of traction and the amount of engagement he has seen, especially with respect to the collaborative effort of the government, of the private sector, of the civil societies, it's unparalleled, right? And there's another school of thought where people ask, what is the private sector doing at a COP? It is a conference for governments of different parts of the world to come together and come up and make their commitments and discuss where they are and so on and so forth. And my answer to that is really not. That was once upon a time. But if we have to solve for the future, we really have to bring together all the stakeholders and get them on the same page and really identify solutions which are measurable to solve the crisis, whether it is to meet our 2030 goals or whether it is to meet our own individual goals, which will all add up and I guess help us preserve the planet at large for the next generation. So, so what is it that we can do? I think I want to refer to the leadership which is being taken in India. And I think India is one of the fastest growing leaders when it comes to climate action. Right? So we have leadership which is defining a vision, and we have execution over the last decade. I'm representing a company called Renew Power. I'm a member of the founding team. And so I have seen the journey from 2010, where nobody really knew if there was a business model to make money from generating renewable energy. Everybody said, oh, in India, people want free energy. Why on earth would anybody pay for electricity, which is a multiple times that of regular conventional energy? So from there to now, where the cost of renewables is only a fraction, it has been quite a journey. And it is not a journey which has been driven only by capital or entrepreneurship, execution, policy, care for the company and the community at large. It's not any of these individually. It's when all of this comes together in a way where we can find solutions and make things cheaper, make them more affordable, make sustainability a personal agenda and make a sustainable way of doing things, the cheaper way of doing things, the better way of doing things. That's when we are going to actually be able to take a small step in the right direction. So I guess with that, I'm not sure how many minutes have gone, but those are my initial thoughts. I'll leave it at that, and MR, we can take the rest of it over the Q&A with our distinguished panelists.
Thank you, Vaishali. Thank you so much. Let's get on with the panel now. I think we have three eminent panelists. You've heard from Vaishali, but we also have Anirban Ghosh, who's the Chief Sustainability Officer of the Mahindra Group, and we also have Aruna Rajan, who is with Google doing a lot of work in the AI and sustainability space. So terrific people to have here from large multinationals as well. So Anirban, first to you. Just give us a quick snapshot of where Mahindra Group is today in general and with sustainability.
Okay, in general, let's say $20 billion turnover, 250,000 people, a few large businesses, some of which you are familiar with, like the cars and the tractors and the finance and the software, but a whole lot of very interesting businesses like green buildings and green resorts and so on. In sustainability, we've got a bunch of commitments, starting with net zero by 2040, science-based targets in the 2030s, doubling energy productivity, 100% renewable energy, and many more of this kind, all of which leading to India's net zero goal of 2070.
Great. And Aruna, how about Google? I know you're a multinational, but you can focus both on the global and India goals, if you will.
Sure. So I can tell you a little bit about the history of Google and sustainability. It was 2007 when Google went net carbon zero, which is we purchased as many offsets as our footprint in compute and storage. So the biggest consumption for Google, apart from, of course, our buildings and our employees' travel and food, is basically our compute centers and our data centers, where we store all the data that we compute on, we run our jobs, as well as we have a Google Cloud offering, where enterprises like Mahindra actually run on Google Cloud their business processes. So what we did in 2007 was, to my knowledge, we were the first company, major company, that said we're going to be zero carbon, net zero carbon, and then we purchased offsets. We also opened up these offsets to be analyzed by third-party agencies to verify that they're actually good offsets. The second thing we did was 2010, we started investing in renewable energy sources, and we started building data centers that are powered by clean energy. We have a couple today in Canada, and we're looking to do more. For our customers that run workloads on us, we've been building machine learning solutions to find which part of their workloads can actually be run in cleaner data centers, in cleaner compute centers, and we've been shipping those jobs there and reducing our carbon footprint on non-clean regions where we are powered by carbon. So our commitment is really by 2030 to be completely carbon-free, to have 24/7 all of our compute and all of our needs powered by renewable energy sources. I think it's a very brave commitment, and almost everything we do, we really think about, are we doing sustainable workloads? Is this travel really necessary? Can we offset it? What should we be doing?
Thank you. And I know, Vaishali, you represent a company that is a renewable energy company. Tell us a little bit about what you do and what technologies you could utilize.
Sure. Thanks, MR. So Renew is, just to kind of explain a little bit more, it's about a 10-year-old company. We're listed on NASDAQ. We started as a wind power generator and moved on to generate clean energy through solar. We also have hydro assets. And so now, believe it or not, in a decade of this journey, this has become conventional renewable energy. And so now, so we do this. We're the leading player in India. We have a pipeline of about, and installed capacity of about 13.4 gigawatts across the country. Going forward, now what we define as the future of energy. So what Renew is doing is we are identifying areas where we can help companies such as Google decarbonize. The hard-to-abate sectors decarbonize. And that is through, obviously, use of clean energy, but other sources of energy as well, and green fuel, like green hydrogen, etc., for aviation sector and all. What I've observed over the last 10 years is that monitoring the generation is very critical. And so we use technology to be able to monitor and report what we are doing on the ground. So a lot of our work is based in remote areas. And so we use a lot of technology to monitor and report it, to address issues. It's all cost saving, right? Because think of it, if we have a turbine which breaks down, it costs us millions of dollars if it's just left unaddressed for perhaps a week, because it takes somebody some time to get there. But if we can anticipate all of these things, we are able to find solutions for such problems. We are looking at generating all of these sources in a more effective manner with better technology. So the turbine we used perhaps a decade ago is vastly different from the generation of what we are doing now. Then the other thing in the future of energy, which I talked about, it's about helping customers to be able to map their needs, to be able to identify areas where we can provide green solutions. So the whole digital and AI part of it is another aspect we are looking at. So we've invested in a lab to be able to monitor issues and help clients go green. So these are some of the areas we are using technology.
And Anirban, you represent a conglomerate that is in so many different businesses. What is your vision of looking at technology, different technology solutions? And here, entrepreneurs and founders are eager to create new solutions. Climate tech is probably the most invested segment in the last 2 years. So what are you seeing there? And what are you using?
Yes, I shall tell you about them, MR. But first, shout out to everybody who's prioritized food for thought over food for half an hour. Thank you very much. If you look at a car today, a new one, it has more electronics and software in it than iron. In fact, in the new car that I have, the XUV 700, I spend more time figuring out the electronics than I spend on figuring out the car. The conventional technology has become very stable, error-free, and so on. Now, while all these technologies are there in the car, we know that we are all moving to electric vehicles. And technologies to optimize battery usage is something that's critically important for us in the future. Imagine car batteries becoming like cell phone batteries. They become smaller, they become more powerful, they last longer, and you use technologies to take as much juice out of the battery as possible, just to use a colloquial term. But these are electronics and software, not the only technologies we use to decarbonize. Vaishali was talking about turbines, and I was reminded of my manufacturing colleague telling us that, 74% of our energy in the factory is consumed by motors. And we've just replaced thousands of motors by going from IE1 to IE3, and that has reduced energy consumption of motors by 33 to 35%. Good news is there is another version, IE5, which is out there in the market, and very soon this bunch of IE3s will also get replaced. There are plenty of such climate technologies or climate-friendly technologies already. Many more are emerging. For us, it is critical to adopt the ones which are economically feasible at scale today. Else, we will not solve the problem. They say that all the technologies we need to reach our 2030 goal are available now. So each one of us should look at, okay, so what are the technologies we can adopt? In the Mahindra Group, it's a regular activity to see what technologies do we take to decarbonize in each one of our businesses.
Terrific, thank you. And Aruna, I know Google, you sit on so much data, you're using AI. Can you give some examples of the use of AI in solving some of these problems?
Sure. I can talk to one that's on compute. What we do is we cool our data centers. These generate a lot of heat. We cool wherever we stack computers. So how do we decide what jobs to run where? And how do we decide when to cool so that we cool efficiently and we're spending the least energy we can? So if you think about all the different kinds of jobs that we run, they're all very complex. Some of them are compute heavy, some of them are read-write heavy. So how would you learn what is the optimal way to run a job, given that you have told a customer that I will run this job by an hour or a day or 3 minutes, right? So this is a problem where machine learning is immensely helpful. We can look at what is the predicted footprint of a job and where is it most likely to succeed. And succeed is defined by consume the least energy, as well as meet the constraints of the SLA that's promised. A second area that we are looking at is, in terms of, we have lots of assets of satellite imagery. It's, if you can go look up Google Earth, it's a free product for researchers, for individuals, where you can see a satellite image of the entire Earth. So given that you have both infrared as well as visual spectrum data on the entire Earth, what can you do about mapping sources of carbon? What can you say about afforestation, deforestation, and how can you predict what might be the carbon sequestered through an activity? These are things that we're starting to look at, and we hope that the entire language of metrics that we use on carbon offsets, on carbon credits, that these can be quantified a little more data-driven and in the software sense of the world, right? Like Anirban mentioned, everything is 80% software run now. So we hope that even this activity is software run for benefit, and we have a good idea of what someone is saying when they say, we purchased 100 carbon offsets, or we are sequestering, 100 petagrams of carbon.
Thank you. Vaishali, you're looking at the future of energy. So what do you think about, how do you work with venture capitalists, startups in this audience? Is there a process that Renew Power is using to deal with that?
Yeah, sure. So obviously one is, we are a first generation, bunch of entrepreneurs. Sumant is the first one to have started this company. So we're funded by them. At that time, MR, when we were looking for funding, we couldn't find a fit between venture capitalists and, private equity. So we kind of flirted with both and got lucky with one. So that's usually the way it works well, and it worked well for us. But now that we are an established company and, we are a leader in India, I look after the sustainability part of the business and amongst other things. And to give you an example, I do believe that women don't get funded, and especially in this sector. So we run a program where we've identified women who are working on projects around the SDGs. So whether it is making of, kind of sustainable bricks, recycling, waste management, et cetera, software and various other technologies, we identify them, we provide mentorship in partnership with IIT Delhi, and we then try and identify funding opportunities. So anybody who's listening, either here in person or through the streaming session, we have opportunities, really solid projects which have gone through various filters, and there are women who are there who are waiting to get funded. We have supported startups as well in the digital space. We've made a couple of acquisitions recently, one in UK and one in Europe. So, we also have an incubation cell. So I'm not sure, these are opportunities, some of the opportunities we anchor. So there's a scope for others to come in for next round of funding. And we're also supporting just young entrepreneurs who are working on good ideas as well. So, one is institutionally and one is also individually. So these are the ways in which we are, and we have a team which is always sort of fishing and scouting for ideas. One, as I said, as an individual level, we'll have a lot of young students from some of the engineering colleges. We have the best minds in India. So to fund them early is something we are looking to do. But our businesses are also looking, and then we put in anchor funds, and then we can bring in perhaps other sources of capital as well. So all related to, as I said, energy transition related, decarbonization. But then there are new areas as well, MR, which I'd like to talk about. So one of the biggest issue which we have is we have issues around safety. We have issues around biodiversity. So can we have solutions? So like the GIB issue, which a lot of the renewable energy companies are facing. The solutions we have right now are very mediocre, very old-fashioned. Perhaps if there is a money chasing sustainable solutions which cover the SDGs, we'll be very happy to talk, maybe perhaps invest, perhaps pilot as well. So those are the areas we're looking.
Anirban, I know within the Mahindra Group, you yourself have a tech company, Tech Mahindra, but how do you work with them and also with startups and venture capitalists to get new solutions for the whole group?
So the biggest thing I tell venture capitalists, startups, is if you have a solution that needs to be tried out, then you have a living lab in our factory. You choose a factory. If your solution is usable, we will use it. And you can check it out. If it works well, we'll buy thousands. And I was fortunate to have colleagues who supported us in this area. In fact, all these motors that I told you about, that was just the beginning of the piece. The number of new tech fans and new tech electrical devices that we've replaced is phenomenal. And it all went this way. We said, okay, you have a living lab, use it, prove your technology, and if it is worth incorporating, we are happy to incorporate it at scale. We used to have a little organization called Mahindra Partners, which would support startups of various different kinds. While we don't have Mahindra Partners anymore, we actually have a small solar power business, a small waste to energy business, and various businesses of this kind. The group itself does a lot of venture capital funding within the group. And Tech Mahindra as an organization, they have a very vibrant innovation cell. And they probably try to do a little of what Google does a lot of. And there are, in fact, one of the important things they work on is how to make telecom towers energy efficient. Because there's a whole lot of work they do around telecom towers. And one other thing, so we haven't made much progress there yet, and this is an answer to, MR, your question on what more would you want. You know, in a building, you can use hardware solutions to increase energy efficiency by 30–35%. All these LEDs, air conditioners, fans, so on, apart from passive design. But if you were to use IoT and you were to use software, I understand you can take energy efficiency to 70–74%. That is absolutely awesome. And there are very, very few installations of this kind that I've seen or heard of. And one of the dreams we have, we've already committed to building net zero energy buildings using solutions available. One of the dreams we have is that we'll be able to use technologies like this to make buildings really energy efficient. Because as reports say, 40% of the world's emissions come from buildings or the energy consumed in buildings. That's the way we look at VCs.
Perfect. Aruna, you at Google have a bird's eye view of everything that happens in this world. So what's going on and what kind of technologies are you looking at and investing in?
Sure. We're not in surveillance. We're not looking at everything, but you know, yeah. But we do have several customers and partners who work in these areas. We have a sustainability accelerator where startups as well as partners, IT services companies, technology companies that want to build sustainable solutions approach us, and we support them with funding in terms of cloud credits, helping them with their compute, setting up, being able to use all Google data centers, goodness, while they focus only on their solution. And again, just like Anirban said, we have multiple partners who are offering themselves as labs for these startups to test out. And some of them we invest in if the technology proves out right. Some of them we partner with and co-build solutions. Anirban talked about energy efficiency. We are trying to work with certain startups on how do you software program energy efficiency when you have a conventional building. And there are several startups working on this. There are startups working on how do you measure agricultural waste and say, how can you put back carbon in the soil? How do you look at planting trees? Can you estimate the amount of carbon sequestered? So again, our assets in these areas are satellite imagery, infrared imagery, again, and compute tools, AI tools. You don't have to build ML models from scratch. You have a repository. You can deploy easily, and you can just test out your idea rather than worry about how to compute. So that's what Google offers, and we are doing this on, I would say, full steam, because we want to get to completely carbon-free by 2030, and that's going to take more strategies than we have figured out.
Thank you. And Vaishali, now we're going to wrap up so quickly, looking at two things. One is what's one game-changing technology that the world could use now, and at the same time, could that help India meet its 2030 goals for climate action? Something you can think of.
Ooh.
It's okay. I mean, they don't have to be the same.
No. I'm just thinking, I really do believe, MR, as you can tell, I'm not a typical tech person. I'm a little bit more of a heart, emotion, sort of a community. Not that tech is not, but I really do feel that one big thing which is going to be a game changer is the mindset change. We really need to be able to own this journey for ourselves and for others. So once we have that in place, I believe we'll be able to accelerate this journey because many more people will be doing more, not for themselves only, but for each other. But if I were to identify one technology which I think is very critical, and that's the buzz around now, is everybody's talking about net zero and, carbon and, all of that. How is it that we can identify, measure, and quantify the quality of what we are talking about? What is this carbon? What is the quality? And how can we make this measurement accessible to the communities as well? Because we're going to rely, the nature-based solutions, we're going to rely on various communities. So can we make it accessible for them? And can we have a shared platform for being able to kind of cross-reference, refer, etc.? So long answer to your very sharp question is that.
No problem. Thank you. Anirban?
Mar, I have one ask. I mean, there are plenty of technology. One, which is energy storage. You solve renewable energy, you will solve hydrogen, you will solve telecom, you will solve electric mobility. Multiple problems you will solve if you do energy storage better. So if there is one ask, it is this. I must mention, MR, I should have done it the last time, that I have an interesting new assignment. It is to start a center for sustainability. And one of the things we want to do at the Center for Sustainability at the Mahindra University is to encourage these new solutions through startups. I have a background in marketing, not the how do you sell more to customers type of marketing, but how do you solve consumer problems type of marketing. And I would want to bring the principles that we were taught then to the problems that we are trying to solve through sustainability and see how many problems we can possibly solve through the youngsters who are all doing wonderful work in our country.
Terrific. Aruna, you have the last word.
Sure, I'll try to make it two, just to make it the last word. So one, I read recently, about 2 days back, about scientists in the US looking at fusion as a controlled source of energy. I'm a physics student, so I was very excited to see that we can now control fusion, and fission is not the only nuclear source of energy, which is dangerous. So I'm looking at people making, storing energy, making energy out of just water, wastewater, and all the water bodies that we have, right? That's one. And the second is tying up marketing and technology that my colleagues have already spoken about. I look at Google as being able to let every single person know their carbon footprint, know what they can do to collect a certain amount of carbon and be able to trade these things. So I might want to plant a tree and subsidize Anirban's Center for Sustainability that will take down lots of trees, right? So this is what I want to enable for lots of people, and that's what I think Google can do.
Well, that's been a phenomenal session, and thank you guys for sticking around our session. But I want to thank Anirban, Aruna, and Vaishali for this wonderful, engaging panel. Thank you.
Thank you, MR. Thank you.